What if I told you there is a completely legal way to accumulate enormous wealth, live off millions of dollars for decades, and still pay almost nothing in taxes? Not just while you're alive, but even after you're gone. No offshore bank accounts, no shady shell companies, no illegal tax evasion schemes. In fact, this strategy doesn't rely on bending the rules at all. It works precisely because it follows the rules exactly as they're written, and that's what makes it so unsettling. This approach has existed inside the U.S. tax system for well over a century, quietly protecting massive fortunes while most people remain unaware it even exists. It's not hidden behind locked doors or secret meetings. It's written plainly into tax law but rarely taught, rarely discussed, and almost never explained in a way regular people can understand. My name is George, and I spend an unhealthy amount of time studying the financial strategies used by the ultra-wealthy. Not because I admire them, but because understanding how the game works is the first step to seeing why the system feels so unfair to everyone else. If you've ever wondered how billionaires manage to pay lower effective tax rates than teachers, nurses, and engineers, or why wealth inequality keeps growing no matter how much politicians argue about tax reform, this video will answer those questions. The strategy is called buy, borrow, die, a simple three-word phrase that explains how enormous fortunes are built, protected, and passed down across generations with minimal taxation. Before we go any further, let me be crystal clear about one thing. This is not a get-rich-quick strategy. This is not something you can do with a few $1,000s. And this is not financial advice. Buy, borrow, die only works if you already have significant assets. But even if you'll never use it yourself, understanding how it operates will completely change the way you think about taxes, investing, and why the wealthy seem to play by an entirely different set of rules. Where the idea came from. The phrase buy, borrow, die was popularized in the 1990s by law professor Edward McCaffrey. He didn't invent the strategy, and he wasn't promoting it as a wealth hack. He was trying to explain something much more troubling. While teaching tax law, McCaffrey noticed that the tax system consistently favored people who already owned assets over people who earned income. To help his students understand this imbalance, he summarized the behavior of the wealthy in 3 simple steps: buy assets, borrow against them, and die before selling. At the time, many academics dismissed this explanation as overly simplistic. Critics argued that real-world tax planning was far more complex than a 3-word slogan. Then 2021 happened. That year, ProPublica published a bombshell investigation using leaked IRS data. The findings confirmed what McCaffrey had been saying all along. Some of the wealthiest individuals in America were paying little to nothing in federal income taxes, despite controlling assets worth tens or even hundreds of billions of dollars. This wasn't theoretical anymore. The numbers were real. And once you understand how buy, borrow, die works, those numbers start to make perfect sense. Phase 1. Buy. The first step is where the wealthy separate themselves from almost everyone else. Most people build wealth through income. They work a job, earn a salary, and receive a paycheck. That paycheck is taxed immediately. Income tax, payroll tax, Social Security, Medicare, and often state taxes too. Only after all that do they get to save or invest whatever is left. The wealthy flip this entire process upside down. Instead of focusing on income, they focus on ownership. They use their money to buy assets that grow in value over time without producing much taxable income along the way. These assets typically include growth stocks that don't pay dividends, high-end real estate private businesses and equity stakes, art, collectibles, and alternative investments. Here's the key concept that makes everything else possible. Unrealized gains are not taxed. If an asset increases in value but isn't sold, the IRS cannot tax that increase. A stock can rise from $10 to $500 over decades, and as long as it remains unsold, the government collects nothing. This allows wealth to compound quietly in the background for years or even generations without triggering any tax obligation. Think about how different this is from the life of a regular worker. Every paycheck is taxed before it's even touched. Every raise pushes you into a higher bracket. Every bonus gets a bigger cut taken out. The wealthy avoid this entirely by structuring their wealth around appreciation rather than income. They buy first. They don't cash out. Phase 2. Borrow. At some point, even the wealthiest people need cash. You can't pay for groceries, houses, or vacations with unrealized capital gains. So, how do they access their wealth without selling their assets and triggering taxes? They borrow. This is where the strategy becomes almost absurdly effective. Banks love wealthy clients. Large asset portfolios represent low risk, long-term relationships, and massive profit potential. As a result, financial institutions have created specialized lending products designed specifically for asset-rich individuals. These are known as securities-backed lines of credit. Instead of selling stocks or real estate, wealthy individuals use those assets as collateral to secure loans. The bank provides cash, and the borrower keeps full ownership of the assets. Here's the most important rule of this entire strategy. Borrowed money is not taxable income. If you borrow $1 million, you owe zero tax on that money. Borrow $10 million? Still zero tax. From the IRS's perspective, the money essentially doesn't exist. The terms on these loans are often extremely favorable. Interest rates are usually lower than personal loans, business loans, or even some mortgages. The larger the portfolio, the better the terms. And while the borrower pays interest, the underlying assets continue to grow. If a portfolio earns 8% annually and borrowing costs 5 to 6%, the math still works. Wealth grows faster than debt. The result is a powerful feedback loop. As assets appreciate, borrowing capacity increases. Loans can be refinanced. More cash can be accessed. And at no point does a taxable event occur. The wealthy end up funding their entire lifestyle with borrowed money while their net worth continues to compound quietly in the background. Phase 3. Die. This is the final step, and the one most people never hear about. Eventually, everyone dies, and under current U.S. tax law, death triggers one of the most generous provisions in the entire system: stepped-up basis. When assets are inherited, their tax value is reset to their market value at the time of death. That means all the gains accumulated over decades simply disappear for tax purposes. If someone bought an asset for $100,000 and it grows to $5 million, the heir inherits it as if it were purchased for $5 million. If they sell immediately, they owe zero capital gains tax. This allows heirs to sell assets, pay off outstanding loans, keep the remaining wealth, owe nothing on decades of appreciation. Generations of growth vanish from the IRS's perspective, and then the cycle begins again. A simple example. Let's make this concrete. Imagine someone starts with $1 million. Instead of spending it, they invest in appreciating assets. Over time, it grows to $2 million. Instead of selling, they borrow against it. Then it grows to $3 million, then $5 million. They live comfortably for decades using borrowed money, never realizing taxable gains. When they pass away, their heirs inherit millions of dollars tax-free, liquidate enough to clear the debt, and keep the rest. Total tax paid on decades of growth? Essentially, zero. Why this strategy scales so well? The larger the portfolio, the more powerful this strategy becomes. Banks compete aggressively for wealthy clients. Bigger portfolios unlock lower interest rates, higher borrowing limits, better negotiating power. Someone with $10 million can live extremely well using this strategy. Someone with $100 million can extract tens of millions in tax-free liquidity while still getting richer every year. The system rewards wealth with more opportunity and punishes income with taxation. The bigger problem. This isn't about loopholes. This is how the system was designed. Tax debates focus on rates, but rates don't matter if wealth is never taxed in the first place. You can raise capital gains taxes to any number you want. It won't affect people who never sell. That's why wealth inequality keeps accelerating. Income gets taxed. Wealth gets preserved. Most people spend their lives playing a game without ever being taught the rules. Buy, borrow, die isn't a conspiracy. It's a blueprint hiding in plain sight. And once you see it, you can't unsee how uneven the playing field really is.